Welcome back to What's Next? Living Longer, Better, Smarter. Who do you know that just might need some help with hearing? Know anyone who's had episodes of brain fog related to long COVID? Today, hearing, health, and help. And we have another great spotlight segment with a CareYaya caregiver who is making a difference. So let's get started. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Mary Furlong. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Fred. This is an exciting episode, and I think everyone will want to learn from it. I know I do. And I'm excited to welcome a new sponsor, Brava. I've been hearing so much about this wonderful countertop oven that makes it so easy for anyone to cook and has safety features that make it perfect for households with older adults too.
And I've been using the Brava oven for just about everything, from toast in the morning to full dinners in the evening. It cooks with light, doesn't get hot on the outside, and can cook different foods perfectly, like potatoes, veggies, and chicken, all at the same time. Kind of amazing. I've never seen anything quite like it. There are thousands of recipes built into it. They are updated over the internet, or you can cook just like you would with a regular oven, only safer and faster.
And they're winning many fans by making the oven and their app accessible to the visually impaired. And because it shuts off automatically when the cooking is done, it's safer too.
There are many more features. We want everyone to check it out. It really redefines home cooking. And the great folks at Brava are offering our listeners and viewers $200 off by heading to shop.brava.com/marycooks. Once again, for the big discount, shop.brava.com/marycooks.
And we've cooked up a great podcast this morning. First, we're going to hear from an exciting new company called Audien.
It is an amazing company that has upended the world of hearing aids and hearing assistance. With us is the co-founder and CEO, Ishan Patel. Hi, Ishan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Ishan, you're helping so many people by making quality hearing aid assistance more affordable. And you're such a young person to do this. Tell us about your company and how this all came about.
Well, for me, I would say my journey in hearing loss really began when I was young, about 8 years old. My grandfather has pretty significant hearing loss. So from a young age, I realized that it completely took away my relationship with him. It was like I lost him for almost 10 years. And when you're a kid, you don't really realize that grandpa is suffering from hearing loss. You think grandpa doesn't like me. He doesn't want to spend time with me, right? And it kind of only when I grew older did I realize that it was just a really big problem with his hearing. And so in 2017, when the FDA announced there was going to be an over-the-counter category, and my current co-founder said, "Hey, this is something that really needs to change," I was extremely passionate about it because my family suffered a lot from the impact of hearing loss, and not just with my grandfather, but for everyone he loved, everyone in our family. And when I learned that there's 1 billion people in the world that suffer from hearing loss, and 80% of them can't afford or access a hearing aid, I just knew this was something that had to change.
And how in the world do you become a leader in this over-the-counter hearing space when there are so many big names out there?
You know, I think a lot of people underestimate the grassroots approach, right? So when I first got into the hearing industry, I worked every single position from cleaning and testing returned hearing aids, lots of earwax, from, talking on the phone with customers for customer service to actually selling the hearing aids on the phones and helping service these individuals. So I heard the hopes, the dreams, the fears, what people liked, what they didn't like from thousands, over 3,000 people directly. So it gives you this intimate understanding of what people actually need. So when it came time to start my own company and invent and design these products, it was actually very clear to me and to my co-founders what the gap was in the market, right? Hearing aids needed to be more affordable. They needed to be comfortable, accessible, and stigma-free. And so I think the way we approached it was it's three grandsons with three grandparents with hearing loss. For me, it was my grandfather, and then 3,000 customers that I personally interacted with. Between all of that learning and those decades of experiences, it was really clear what needed to change. And I think that that's a big difference between us and everyone else because we're bootstrapped, right? So we're not private equity backed. We don't have a bunch of funding, and it's not kind of like a Fortune 500 team coming in to fix and flip the company for a profit. This is just people that deeply care about the mission and want to help the billion people worldwide that need it.
So, what should people know who either don't hear as well as they used to, or have a family member or friend maybe who needs help? You've got
Yeah,
different solutions and styles available.
absolutely. So it's kind of funny. People ask, well, if it's over the counter and there's no hearing test required, there's no doctor's visit required, there's no prescription required, which makes it so much more accessible for the average person, right? Then how do I know if I have hearing loss? How do I know it's going to work for me? And I always laugh and kind of answer. I go, if you don't know, the people you love most definitely do, right? Has anyone told you the TV's too loud? Have you said huh or what or asked people to repeat themselves a ton of times? Do you feel like you're just kind of leaving the conversation? If you're in a crowded room, you can't pick up the words, you can't quite make out what people are saying. These are all the easy, very common identifiers of hearing loss. So it's one of those things that you know when it's happening or someone you love knows. So that's kind of the first indicator, right? And then the beauty is we have hearing aids starting at just $98. So whether you want to dip your toes with a small in the ear, like earbud style, even smaller and more invisible than the headphones I'm wearing right now solution, or you want to go with the Bluetooth app controlled behind the ear for full customization, but simplicity, because we reinvented that entire app experience, then we have everything you need. And the beauty is it's over the counter. So you can actually buy it and gift it to somebody, which is a huge shift in the ability to help people now. Because there are people, let's be honest, like my grandpa in the past, who just won't do it for themselves. They don't want to take that step, whether it's a fear, the stigma, the price, the complexity. Audien hearing just takes all of that out of the way and makes it so that you or your loved one can get the help you need.
So I love what you're doing with quality and pricing. How are you growing so quickly?
That's a great question, Mary. We are, as you can tell, I'm a little younger than the average hearing aid CEO. So we're approaching it just really new age, meaning we're employing all of the digital channels from Facebook to TV to Google to magazine to radio to, I mean, literally everything you can think of. So we're really utilizing the power of modern, not only technology and the hearing aids we've invented, but marketing to be able to reach a much broader and wider audience. We're also doing it in a way that's never been done. So when you have this messaging that, hey, you can now get hearing aids starting at $98 without a doctor visit, without a prescription, and you've got a company that has 1 million+ customers now with in-house customer support that provides you lifetime service for the duration of your relationship with us, because this is not a one and done purchase. This is a lifelong journey, right? It's kind of the perfect storm to help people understand I can take this step. And when I take it, I'm not taking it alone. So I think it really takes both. You can't just have the product. You can't just have the service. You have to have them put together and you have to deliver it in the way that the customer wants it delivered, right? You have to put it where they want to see it, not where you want. And I think that's a big competitive advantage we have in the way we approach our business.
So where can they find it? And I have to say, congratulations, amazing progress in such a short time.
Thank you. It's been an amazing and humbling 5 years. And right now we're available nationwide in Walmart. We go on air with QVC all the time. I can't say exactly who yet, but in Q3 and Q4 we're launching with a huge number of retailers. So we're going to be a lot more available too in different retail industries. And obviously we're available on Amazon. And then the best place oftentimes is just audienhearing.com, right? Our website where you can learn more, contact our team, and you can directly get the hearing aids there as well.
Oh, congratulations, Ishan.
Thanks, Fred. Growing up, I always had big dreams, but not the fancy cars and the big houses so much as I want to try to change the world, right? And it's kind of, you hear 6-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds say that. And I had a caveat to that. I want to change the world and I want to do it with the people I love most. So for me, the most exciting part about Audien is that I got to bootstrap a company with all of my closest friends and family, grow it to be the most impactful and large scale OTC hearing aid company in the world. And so far, change over 1 million lives and families' lives. So for me, that's the measure of success, right? Is being able to say that we've been able to touch 1 million lives. We're really millions when you consider all the impact and the ripple effect of hearing loss. I mean, it's just inspiring for me to keep it going because 1 million down, 999 million to go.
I love what you're doing and your enthusiasm, and all this before you're turning 30. So imagine what your life ahead will be like. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You know, Fred, hearing loss can lead to other health issues and to social isolation. And you have another interview for an important health issue, brain fog related to COVID, and a new study. So tell us about it.
Mary, Posit Science, a company we have known for years for the Brain HQ app, worked with researchers at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, who looked into how people with long COVID brain fog can be helped. Joining us from Posit Science is CEO Dr. Henry Manka.
Hi, Fred. Nice to see you.
Great to see you once again, and also the study lead, Dr. Jitendra Uswate, professor of psychology at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Great to see you, and we will start off with maybe a description, Jitendra, of some of the problems that we've seen from long COVID.
So long COVID affects about 6 to 8 million people in the US alone. Symptoms range from shortness of breath, GI problems, to various problems with thinking. The most prominent problem people experience is brain fog, which is sort of an experience of fuzzy, confused thinking. And along with that, there are problems with memory, making decisions, sustaining attention.
And Henry, you've had Brain HQ, an app out for years to assist with brain health and memory. And turning your attention to what's happened in the wake of COVID, which I guess hasn't really gone away,
Yes.
describe how this has been able to help.
Well, when we first built Brain HQ, which of course is a set of brain training exercises designed to help improve how information gets processed in the brain and help improve things like attention and memory and thinking skills. We ran quite a few trials in older people as we got started because we wanted to help people maintain and improve their brain health as we aged. But as time went on, more and more independent academic investigators came to us and said, hey, I've got a federally funded research study in TBI or in chemo brain or in multiple sclerosis. Can I try these brain exercises in these different conditions? And when we started, we thought, well, these are all very different conditions. I'm not very sure that the same exercises that help an older person maintain or improve their cognitive function would help in multiple sclerosis, for example. But more and more, most of those trials started to come back positively, and it really changed the way I think about these kinds of cognitive dysfunctions. G used exactly the right phrase there because that's how people describe their symptoms, sort of brain fog. And, it turns out that if you talk to people who have MS, or if you talk to people who have chemo brain, or if you talk to people who are aging and have cognitive decline, they use a lot of the same words to describe their symptoms. And in fact, if you give them cognitive tests, well, you kind of see a lot of the same things in terms of their impairments around speed and attention and memory. And so as these reports came out during the early parts of COVID, that lots of people were bouncing back and getting better. But, as G put it, lots of people were not bouncing back and getting better. They might clear the virus, but they still had these other symptoms, both physical and brain health symptoms. And as soon as we read about how people were describing these symptoms along COVID, we thought, oh my gosh, this sounds exactly like the people we've talked to in chemo brain or in MS. And so when Jitendra approached us and we first started talking about the study, we were incredibly excited. Hey, let's take this proven technology in one area and let's see if it can be put to work in this new area of long COVID, which as you said, G, affects so many people.
Jitendra,
As Henry was,
tell us about the study.
well, just building on what Henry was saying, brain fog is a condition that affects not just people with long COVID, but people with other post-viral syndromes and people who've had TBIs and so on. But it's gotten really very little attention. It's been viewed as a patient complaint, but certainly in long COVID, there's evidence on neuropsychological testing of cognitive impairment. And more than that, it can be highly disabling for some people. For some people, about 1 in 10 with long COVID, it prevents them from getting back to work.
I understand depression is also one of the symptoms here.
Depression, anxiety, yes, fatigue.
Yeah.
So what do we know about the effectiveness here? Tell us about the study and what you've been able to find.
Well, our most striking finding is that we help people get back to work. So in our treatment group testing our new intervention, um, there were 7 in that group. 2 had retired before they got long COVID. But 4 of the 5 who were interested in getting back to employment did. Whereas in our comparison group, none did. So really a striking difference there in getting people back to work in the 2 conditions in our study. The other noteworthy findings are we observed large improvements in performance of everyday tasks that were important to participants. And we did see improvements in processing speed, which is a prominent cognitive impairment in people with long COVID.
Yeah, and when you shared those results with us, G, after the study was done, exactly like you laid out there, it was quite remarkable to me to see, the story kind of tell itself. As a result of the training they got as part of your research study, you showed those improvements in cognitive function, which is kind of the direct target of the overall intervention.
Mhm.
And as a result of those improvements in cognitive function, you saw these improvements in what I would call everyday cognitive function, your measure of, hey, what are the cognitive obstacles that people encounter with people? And then, as you led with correctly, most striking, 80% of this initial group went back to work, which is remarkable because, when you think about 6 to 7 million people being affected by long COVID, it's a tragedy at the individual level, it's a tragedy at the family level, but hey, this is a tragedy at the workforce level. People here as well, right? These are people who are part of the workforce, both contributing to society through work, but contributing to their families through work. And to see them being able to get back to work is it's really quite a promising signal in even this first study.
Are there particular activities or games, I guess we can call them, in Brain HQ that are most effective here in dealing with it?
Well, G will talk about this in some depth, I'm sure, but just to be clear, what the study involved with was a combination of what we'd call progressive brain training, which are these Brain HQ exercises, but then also a really innovative form of what I'd call progressive brain health coaching that you and your colleagues at University of Alabama, Birmingham developed so that people got both kind of the computerized training as well as someone to really help them kind of connect the dots into their real world cognitive function. Is that right, G?
Yes, 3 components to the therapy. One is cognitive processing speed training using the double decision game that's in the Brain HQ suite. Then uh, training on everyday tasks in one-on-one with our therapist. And last, we had a set of behavior change procedures that are designed to promote transfer from the treatment setting to everyday life. So you have the computerized brain training and then sort of 2 bridges to everyday functioning.
Are there certain age groups that have been more affected by these long COVID symptoms?
The participants in our study were mostly in their 40s to 50s, so people in their prime working years.
And but gee, just building on that, I don't know the epidemiology of this. Do you have a sense from the field? We know that older people in general are more vulnerable to COVID. We know that often they can become more ill with COVID compared to younger people. Are older people also more likely to go on to suffer the symptoms of long COVID, or is it sort of a roll of the dice? Young people and old people might be going on to long COVID.
I'm not sure of the data on that. I think it's likely that both are. But in terms of folks who were interested in our study, there were mostly folks in that 40 to 50-year-old cohort.
Yeah, those are the folks who raise their hands. I've certainly seen stories across the media from, folks who surprised me. Young people really kind of at the earliest part of the prime of life, one might say, sort of not only just struck down by the infection, which is challenging enough, but then having a hard time bouncing back in this way. So it affects a lot of people.
And for many people, I think, especially today, they're viewing COVID as a bad cold, maybe sometimes not even a bad cold, and they just get over it. But um, are they susceptible to these long COVID symptoms any more or less than people who really got sick from COVID?
I'll say a word or two, and I'm sure G is going to want to build on it. I think one of the really interesting things about this to me as a neuroscientist, and you mentioned this a moment ago, G, is I think we're starting to get a bigger appreciation for what I would call, post-viral symptoms. Long COVID is, I think, how this really entered the popular media because there was a COVID emergency going on. A lot of people were getting COVID. And so when people weren't bouncing back, we became to know this. But the more you look at almost any kind of viral infection, even something as common as the flu, there are always a certain fragment, a certain segment of people that, do not bounce back from this fully and have these kinds of symptoms. And I think at the basic science level, what we're going to be learning more and more about in the years to come is it's nothing particularly magic about the COVID virus itself that causes long COVID. It's just that a lot of people got that all at once.
Yeah.
We're going to gain a deeper appreciation for kind of, whether it's long COVID, whether some people have called it long flu. Some people in your listeners, Fred, might have heard of chronic fatigue syndrome, which I think we're starting to really appreciate as almost really a post-viral infection syndrome. And those are going to be unified in some sort of underlying biology that we're just now discovering. I don't know, G, is that your sentiment? How would you think about those kinds of things?
Yeah, so we're starting in our lab a study on brain fog in people with chronic fatigue syndrome now. So I'm on the same page with you about that. This is common to viral infections. And Fred, circling back to your question, like about 1 in 10 people who get COVID-19 go on to develop long COVID, the persistent symptoms.
That's a lot because it has been so prevalent.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's we're in a world where it's probably going to continue to be prevalent in sort of a background way. Even if the immediate symptoms aren't too bad because most people have been vaccinated or because most people have prior exposure, but I think we're still going to be seeing these cases of long COVID that come out of them as a pretty significant issue.
So, what can you tell people about Brain HQ? This is available as an app, Android, iOS, and whether or not you have long COVID or not, I think it can do a lot of it pretty good.
Yeah, so Brain HQ, exactly right. Set of brain exercises that anyone can do on a laptop, on a phone, on a tablet. And, the great thing about this, of course, is that it, comes with this tremendous body of clinical trials associated with it, showing that it really helps improve cognitive function and real world function. More than 300 studies show that and so forth. And hey, anyone who wants to try this out and see what it's like can do that at absolutely no cost. People can register at www.brainhq.com, and that gives you one exercise a day for free to see if this is something that you like. Hey, I think we're really entering a world where more and more people are thinking about just actively taking care of their brain health, as you say, whether they're healthy or whether they're not healthy. In the same way we all think about physical exercise for physical exercise, we should be thinking about brain exercise for brain health. But for people who specifically are, maybe have gone through COVID or who have a friend or a loved one who maybe feels like they haven't bounced back, I think what's really exciting about Jitendra's work here is that you can go to your doctor, to go to your clinician, and talk about these symptoms. This doesn't have to be something that you think about like, hey, the rest of my life will be this way. There's nothing I can do about it. It's something you can go talk to a doctor, talk to a clinician about and say, I'm having these brain fog symptoms. What are the kinds of things that you can recommend to me? Maybe a brain training program like Brain HQ. Maybe I should be seeing an occupational therapist. A lot of the work that I think you pulled into this, G, is kind of based on some of these kinds of techniques that rehab people and so forth have developed over the year. And I think that if people can recognize this as something they can take active steps about rather than just feeling like, wow, I'm not ever going to come back. Hey, that's the first step towards getting the help that people need.
So you don't have to live with it.
Not necessarily. We need more studies, and G, I know you have more lined up, but
Yes.
but I think it's a really first initial step to say, hey, there's a future here, and we do not necessarily have to live with these conditions.
Yeah, I agree with Henry that that's one of the most important messages that come out of the study, that there is hope. I mean, people made substantial recovery to the point where they were able to get back to work, get to back to everyday life activities that were important to them.
You think there are a lot of people who suffer through this and don't want to say anything to an employer because of the maybe the stigma that they feel would be attached to it?
Indeed, and we hear that it's makes it difficult to recruit people to take part in the study. And the interesting thing is because there's this delay in some cases, sort of delay between the infection, right? You could have a mild COVID-19 infection and then go on to develop long COVID later on down the line. So often, not sometimes, people don't make the connection between the long COVID symptoms they have and the COVID-19 infection they had maybe 3 months or 4 months ago. So they may be experiencing the symptoms, but not connecting it to their COVID-19 infection.
And it's a real challenge, as you say, Fred. And I think you saw this in recruiting your study, G. That's that sense of a stigma, and it's every time that comes up, I really do want to get up on the soapbox and say that, hey, as a society, we've just got to figure out a way to move beyond that, right? There's not if you fall down and you twist your ankle and you have to take anti-inflammatory drugs and you have to take 2 weeks off of work on crutches, no one's going to make fun of you for doing that unless you fell down in a very amusing way. But in general, we have a lot of sympathy when a person has a physical health problem like that they're going to get through with rehabilitation and medicine. And we really need as a society to get to a point where we are thinking about brain health issues the exact same way, right? Because I totally get it. Thinking and memory and concentration, they're very core to who we are. They're core to our sense of ourselves. It's makes people nervous to admit that they're forgetting something or they feel foggy or they just can't multitask the way they used to. But we really need to move past that feeling so that we can identify these problems, people can get the help that we need, we can develop new treatments the way Jitendra and your lab have been doing. And hey, just think about issues around brain health in the same way we think about physical health, which is with kindness and love and compassion and with a progress-oriented mindset that, hey, let's help this person get better.
Great message. Where can people go for more info?
Well, they should Google CI Therapy Lab. If they Google CI Therapy Lab, that's CITHERAPY Lab. They can find out more about our ongoing studies. They could also Google my name, Uswate, USWATTE, and that will get them to information about ongoing studies in my lab. And we do have an ongoing clinical trial for adults with long COVID.
Terrific. And of course, the app, as you mentioned, Henry, brainhq.com.
That's right. Come up and sign up and take it out for a spin. And we're always happy if you need any questions, reach out to us at support@brainhq.com. We're happy to get you set up.
Henry and Jitendra, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you for hosting us.
Thanks, Fred. It's been a pleasure.
There's more info again at brainhq.com. Mary, it's time for our Spotlight segment, which I am really looking forward to. Joining us once again are CareYaya founder and CEO Neil Shah, and another great caregiver, CareYaya team member Anthony Altobelli. Hi, Neil and Anthony.
Hey, Fred and Mary. Thanks for having us.
I just love our Spotlight series, Neil. I'm so excited we're doing this. I'll let you introduce everyone to the company and to Anthony.
Sure. So CareYaya is one of the fastest growing aging technology companies in America. We connect a force of now over 40,000 strong college students who are aspiring healthcare professionals, our future doctors and nurses of America. And we connect them to take care of older adults in their communities as both a way to help people build intergenerational relationships and also get valuable experience for future graduate school and clinical careers. So excited to really be here and spotlight Anthony Altobelli, an amazing pre-med student at Georgetown University, who I recently had the pleasure of meeting in person a few weeks ago when I was up in DC, and has been helping a lot in both providing care in his community and helping spearhead a lot of our expansion into DC. Anthony, take it away.
Thank you, Neil. And I just want to say thank you, Fred and Mary, for inviting me on the podcast. This means a lot because CareYaya has done a lot for me, not only as a pre-medical student, but also an aspiring physician. So I thank you for the opportunity for having me here. I really do appreciate it.
So, Anthony, tell us about your experiences with CareYaya and as a pre-med student at Georgetown, and really how this became so meaningful to you.
Neil kind of touched upon it. CareYaya connects us pre-medical students to those in the community needing at-home care. My experience so far has been absolutely overwhelmingly positive. I cannot say anything, bad about it. I think one of the greatest things about CareYaya is, the connection between the families and the pre-medical students is so streamlined, and is definitely very comfortable for both parties. And I think that's very important because allowing for a streamlined process and allowing for the connection to be very easy allows for the actual care to be delivered efficiently. And I think that's one of the features that CareYaya has that actually makes it really amazing. So during my time so far, and I hope to continue while here in the tri-state area, during my time with CareYaya, I've had the pleasure to care for three different families. And I think one of the biggest things I've taken away from it is, as an aspiring physician, you learn about the patient interactions. You learn about what is needed as a caregiver. And, I'd say that having three different families that I've cared for, they all had different needs. One family, I had a patient who had Alzheimer's, learning how to pick up on nonverbal cues, knowing what to do, when to do it based off of, just slight interactions. I had another patient who's on hospice, sometimes care isn't necessarily doing, the most extensive things. Sometimes it's just communicating, engaging. Sometimes it's just, cracking a smile and having a laugh. And then last, I had another patient who lived alone for 40 years. She would tell me sometimes, stop talking, I don't want to talk too much. And, I think one of the greatest things is, about that is sometimes you need to take a step back and let the patient guide you. And CareYaya, the diversity in the patients allowed me to have diversity in experiences. And with this diversity in experiences allowed me to have, many valuable insights. Um, and it means a lot to me. It means a lot to me because, this is the first time as a pre-medical student that I had the opportunity to actually provide direct patient care. As a student, I studied biochemistry. My schedule was tough, especially with extracurriculars required to get into med school. I think CareYaya, what it does so efficiently is provide students with the flexibility and also families with the flexibility having so many students to choose from. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about it. It means a lot because that first patient interaction, the value it brings and the satisfaction that you have, I mean, it truly is unbelievable. So I owe a lot to CareYaya, and that's why I want to continue to help expand it because it's done so much for me as a pre-med student.
Anthony, you could have worked at many different types of jobs instead of this, maybe even have earned more. Tell us more about the value proposition that maybe other students should know about too. And maybe we'll let Neil follow up after your answer.
It's funny you asked that. First off, CareYaya pays very well. It's not like, we're not making any money, but, it's not necessarily about the money, which I'll touch upon. But it's really funny you mentioned that because I was actually on the phone last night with one of my buddies who graduated from the School of Business. And, us pre-medical students compared to the business guys and the business gals, they're making quite a bit. But, I've always been told that you go into medicine not because of the money. You're not making money really for, the first 10 years of, the path. And with that, I would tell the other students that, being a care aide for CareYaya is not about the money, but it's more so the value is gained in the experiences you actually have and actually seeing the joys of being a caregiver. And to do it through a platform that also has such a focus on the family, you really feel like you're a part of something big. And in a care industry nowadays that is pretty broken. It's very difficult for families to overcome a lot of financial barriers to at-home healthcare. And oftentimes, with the professional care agencies, I actually had an interaction with one of my patients. One of the family members indicated to me that, they appreciated so much not only what I was doing as a personal care aide, but also what CareYaya was doing because the professional care agencies they're not affordable for them. And oftentimes when they were able to bring them in, they lacked interaction with the patient. And I think for students, don't think about the money. Think about the fact that you're impacting the lives of others, definitely for the better. And I think that's, the foundation of medicine. It's always about the patient, and knowing you can do well for that and do good. I definitely think that should be the focus.
Neil?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I don't have a lot more to add. I think Anthony put it like really well. What I like the most about it is that these are formative experiences for people, So I think for somebody like Anthony who's doing well in school, has taken very hard classes, has a bunch of extracurricular activities, I feel like, providing an experience like CareYaya where, he can go directly help members of his community who need help at home, kind of see both the impacts and challenges of how they're navigating, kind of home-based care, see the positivity that he can bring to people and like the positive impact he can make on people's lives. I hope that that kind of like creates a positive first experience of like, okay, I'm not entering into something in a jaded or cynical way, which oftentimes many other, types of like care work and even sometimes healthcare work can be, it's like might jade you, but you're entering in like a very positive way where like I'm making a positive impact on people. This is the mission. I think like he said, like he's actually thought about it like very profoundly that you have 5, 10+ years ahead of you of like schooling, residency, etc. So you got to like be very mission oriented of what you're getting into. So I really like that, that it's bringing positivity to both sides and encouraging people to kind of stick with it and, pursue future clinical careers. So yeah. And then obviously the feedback from the families is awesome, and that's like, that drives us every day, So I think, families are having a great experience, but I think to hear Anthony and students like Anthony also speak so positive about their experience is like really heartwarming.
I see a quadruple bottom line here, but Anthony, I love the way you differentiated the families. And this is a real formative experience that you've had. And I'm sure it's increased your commitment to going into medicine. But I'm kind of curious about what area of medicine do you think you might go into?
Loaded question, what do I want to do with my life? You know,
Asking that in June, right? This is the
yeah,
time of the year everyone has to answer, even if you're going into first grade.
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate the question. I actually have to, I can't provide a definitive answer. I'm not 100% sure where I want to end up in terms of what type of medicine I want to practice. Um, but with that, I think CareYaya hasn't necessarily directed me towards what type of medicine I want to, practice, but it really has directed and provided, experiences and reminders of how I want to actually provide care. And I think that differentiation is very important because, a physician in a specialty, you serve a role of that specific, serving a certain population of patients, a certain set of diagnoses. But it's important that all physicians and all aspiring physicians understand that regardless of what specialty you're in, you're treating patients and you're treating real people who have different needs. And I think with CareYaya, some of the takeaways I've had, are going to direct how I actually want to direct patient care. Um, more specifically, some of the takeaways I've had have been, really impactful on how I view medicine, I mean, one takeaway being, you can learn just as much from the patient as the patient can learn from you. And I think, medicine, the doctor patient relationship, the idea of diagnosing and treating, all these things, it's not a one-way relationship. It's not a one-way road. It is very much so a two-way street that requires the formation of a relationship. And with that, you instill comfort into the patient and trust. Because at the end of the day, they're handing over their autonomy to you to make sure that they are well cared for. And I think that must be done with compassion. And I've seen, how compassionate care can have an impact on the lives of these patients. And it truly is a beautiful thing. And Neil said it drives them every day, but it also drives me to, want to continue down this path of a lot of debt and also, a lot of school. Um, and I think one of a second takeaway that I have from my time with Carrie I and my experiences is you always need to center the patient above yourself. You know, Neil said I was busy, and there were times where I was very tired. Going to a shift and going to a care session, but always centering the patient above my own needs allowed me to keep going. And I think that drives me, and that's one of the motivating factors for pursuing a career in medicine. There's going to be a time where I'm going to have the knowledge base and I'm going to have the privilege to have had that knowledge base developed so I can serve other people. And I think that's probably one of the most, satisfying, roles in society. And, the delayed satisfaction is definitely, worth the wait, knowing what I've experienced here at CareYaya.
I've been doing this for 35 years, the work I've been doing. And the first time I went online with a group of older adults, the question was, how come when I go to the doctor, they don't listen to me? I love the way you're listening. I love the way this experience is sharpening your skills in listening and you're differentiating. I think you're going to be a wonderful doctor at a time when there's a huge need for doctors and people in medicine. So we wish you all the best, Anthony, I think, and congratulations, Neil. You're really creating and shaping a workforce that's so impressive. And I want to just mention too this new report by Grant Chamberlain that talks about constructing the digital health and AI industry. And he's looked at many, many companies that are innovating in the space. But the spotlight need here is just the huge number of people we're going to need in healthcare over the next 10 to 20 years. And we really need a whole lot of Anthonys out there. So Neil, any thoughts? But I'm so impressed. I'm so glad we're spotlighting this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it all, Mary. I think that I'm very excited to empower Anthony, to kind of like pursue his passions and go into a career. And I think that, I think as he's alluded to, really bedside manner, of practicing physicians is so critically important. And I think that through providing care one-on-one with people, getting to know them in kind of like their home setting, getting to know kind of like all the joys and sorrows and, things that they look forward to in their lives, getting to understand the family that's caring for them. I think these are all things that create a tremendous amount of bedside manner, that then improves the patient's perception of the care experience, down the line. So I hope that, as Anthony's a successful practicing physician, 10, 15, even 20 years later, will like remember these as like formative experiences, and that shapes, what he does every day. So yeah, I'm very excited. I'm grateful for the students too, doing this work. So it's really awesome.
Just terrific, changing lives in so many ways. Anthony's life, the families, the people who are receiving the care as well. There's more at CareYaya.com. A quick note for those in our audience focused on aging and longevity. The What's Next Longevity Venture Summit is coming up June 9th, 10th, 11th in Berkeley, California. There is still time to register. You really don't want to miss it. Better hurry, though. The site is longevityventuresummit.com.
And we have an amazing agenda. We just added a half day of boot camps on June 9th. So much information here. And the market's moving very quickly. And you really have to understand how people are pivoting in light of the times. And that will all be covered at our conference. So I'm looking forward to it and to seeing so many people who are working to improve the lives of older adults. Neil, let's find some scholarships for our CareYaya so we can get them there. I love when your CareYayas can see the latest innovations that entrepreneurs are creating and investors are investing in. So would love to have some there again.
Just terrific. We want to thank all of our guests, Neil and Anthony, Henry and Jitendra, and Ishan as well. We hope you will all check out our sponsor for this episode, Brava. They are redefining home cooking, making it safer, simpler, and more accessible for all. Remember that $200 discount offer by going to shop.brava.com/MaryCooks. And finally, thank you for taking the time to watch or listen. You can always find us at maryfurlong.com/podcasts.